No, the Panthers starters aren't playing on Thursday night, but that does not mean that there's not still plenty of things to look out for during the Panthers preseason finale. I'll tell you what I'm watching out for right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, because starting on Wednesday, September 3rd, it's back. The weekly Wednesday mailbag every single Wednesday throughout the regular season and quite possibly the playoffs here on Locked On Panthers. But in the meantime, you can at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council, or at me over on Blue Sky, also at Julian Council. Any questions, any thoughts that you have pertaining to the Carolina Panthers. Today's episode, Locked On Panthers, brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. We're back again here on Locked On Panthers. Panthers welcome in the Pittsburgh Steelers on Thursday evening for their preseason finale. And no, we will not see Bryce Young. We will not see Derek Brown. We will not see J.C. Horn or any of the primary starters here in Carolina. But we will be seeing plenty of Jack Plummer and a bunch of backups who honestly have a lot to play for on Thursday evening. And Dave Canales said this way back in June, that the preseason was going to matter. When asked about the wide receiver numbers way back then, he said it's going to matter. When asked on Tuesday about can guys potentially win jobs based off of what they do in this game on Thursday night, he said yes. So Thursday does matter. It may not be the sexiest thing in what you necessarily want to watch, because who really is that excited about watching backups? But understand, this is a job interview. For a lot of these guys, it's the last impression they can have on the coaching staff, and it does matter. It is important. And yes, I will be there to watch it all and break it all down with y'all live from the press box after the game on Thursday evening, maybe early Friday morning, depending upon how late it takes for me to get to that point. So here are the things that I'm watching out for against Pittsburgh on Thursday. Well, number one has to be the wide receiver battle, right? We know right now, and we'll talk later about a potential trade that could make a lot of sense for Carolina. But right now, Adam Thielen, Xavier Legette, Tanner McMillan, they're not going anywhere. They're going to be on the roster. Well, maybe one of them won't be here, but they're on the roster. Jalen Coker, he's safe. Hunter Renfrow, I'm guessing he's safe. David Moore, we'll see. Jimmy Horn Jr., we'll see. Brycen Tremayne, we'll see. The battle for the last wide receiver spot, whether that's going to be the 6th spot or the 7th spot, 8, dare I say, I think that'd be a bridge too far. But the battle for the final spots at wide receiver for Carolina will be settled on Thursday evening. Last week, we saw Brycen Tremayne, who has been a star out at camp, made some plays, was actually the leading receiver for the Panthers on Saturday afternoon in Houston. He was the first wide receiver to come into the game after Legette, after McMillan, and after Thielen, which made me go, especially considering that Hunter Renfrow was available. Now, Jalen Coker wasn't. I'm guessing Jalen would have been that 4th wide receiver had he not had the illness that caused him to miss Thursday's joint practice and then, of course, Saturday's preseason game. So Brycen Tremayne, he got the first opportunity, and he made some plays. And he can also help out on special teams. So it feels like he has a great chance to make the roster right now. Jalen Coker, who I mentioned missed last week, he will play. I don't imagine he's going to play a ton, but Dave Canales wanted to get him back out there after missing some valuable reps. This does not say anything about his status on the team. It's just he wants to get him out there after he missed so much time. And I'm guessing that even had he played last week in joint practice and the preseason, maybe he gets a series or two. I'm not going to imagine he's going to play a ton on Thursday, so that may not have changed either way, but they want to get him out there one last time. Jimmy Horn Jr., big opportunity for him. The talk of the town was he's going to come in and be a returner. Raheem Blackshear very clearly has lost that job after we saw Trevor Etienne be the primary kickoff returner, even punt returner on Saturday. And Jimmy Horn was out there a couple of times as well. So this is his last chance to show his worth as a returner. And he has not necessarily done a lot on offense either. So if he's going to make the team, and if he's going to be a part of a duo there with Trevor Etienne, who's been placed back there with Rico Dowdle on kickoff return, Thursday night's going to mean a lot for him. And Hunter Renfro's been pretty quiet since the hamstring injury, since Hunter Renfrow Day a couple of weeks ago when Dabo was in town. We were all just amazed at what he had been able to do. He went at length talking about what he had gone through over the last couple of years with the ulcerative colitis, and it was such a great feel-good story. But since then, he got hurt. Jalen Coker's balled out, and you kind of forgotten about Hunter Renfrow and what he can bring to Carolina. You're not as excited as you were back then. Maybe you were and still are, but I don't know. I'd like to see Hunter get some good reps in, make some plays, and yeah, he's got Jack Plummer at quarterback, but he also has Bryce Perkins potentially for a little bit of time. So want to see what Hunter Renfrow is able to do so he can also potentially solidify a spot on the initial 53-man roster in Carolina. So the back of the wide receiver roster, the depth chart there, that is certainly the top thing I'm looking out for. The backup offensive line as well. Excited to see what Brady Christensen does at left tackle. Looks like Chandler Zavala is going to be back from that patellar tendon issue. As long as there wasn't any sort of setback the other day, it seems like he's going to be fine. He can get out there. And if he is healthy this week, next week, and heading into week one, Damian Lewis seems to be really in question whether he's going to start on the road in week one against Jacksonville. Chandler Zavala would be the next man up. Maybe Brady Christensen gets that opportunity. Maybe Cade Mays, who was filling in there the last couple of practices. But I'm thinking that Chandler is going to be that guy at left guard. So him getting some quality snaps, playing a lot on Thursday, playing well would go a long way to feeling good about where Carolina's head with the offensive line, whether they have Damian Lewis or not. And if he doesn't play well, there's still Brady Christensen, there's still Cade Mays who'll be starting at center, and there's potentially Ja'Tyre Carter, who did get the opportunity week one against Cleveland to start at left guard. Did not get the opportunity last week. He was banged up in that game against Houston, bounced back. He's totally fine. He'll be starting out right guard, but he has a chance to earn a final roster spot because you have the top five guys in Ike Ekwonu, in Damian Lewis, in Austin Corbett, the starting center, Robert Hunt at right guard, and then, of course, Taylor Moton at right tackle. Then behind them, it's Brady Christensen, it's Cade Mays, it's Chandler Zavala, it's Josh Nijman. And is there a spot for one more? And if there is, Ja'Tyre Carter, you're right there playing alongside the other four backups. This is your opportunity. Aside from what we already seen in the past, this is your chance to solidify the 10th spot on the offensive line here in Carolina on Thursday evening. But let's look at the other side of the ball as well. We talked to Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers. He was telling us that the Pittsburgh Steelers young offensive line, guys like Zach Frazier, are going to be out there starting and playing a lot on Thursday evening. That's great, because the Panthers have some questions as far as the interior defensive line depth goes. Now, we know that Derek Brown, he's going to be a stud. Bobby Brown III, what his role is going to be. Turk Wharton, A'Shawn Robinson. Those four, you like those four. And in the NFL, with the limited amount of snaps that you play because of the running clock, that's good enough. And you have a guy in Derek Brown who can play 90% of the snaps throughout a season. Now, you don't want to ask him to do that again, of course, but you know that with those four, you're fine. But if an injury happens, who can step up and fill that too deep and help out the top four on the interior defensive line? LeBron Ray, he's been banged up the last couple of weeks with a high ankle sprain. Dave Canales said the other day that he did not bounce back the way they were hoping, but there's still a possibility he could play on Thursday. If he doesn't play, does he make the roster? I'm not so sure. He did get a couple of first-team reps during joint practice against Cleveland, so it's possible that they do like him enough to where he could not play and still make it. But it's a big day for Shai Tuttle. Remember, he got a pay cut back in the spring. He was willing to take it. I don't think he had much recourse. As far as making money this year in the league, I don't think anybody else was going to pay him what he's getting paid in Carolina. And there's a role for him on this team as a backup, as potentially that fifth guy. But he's got to beat out Cam Jackson, who may be back and ready to go on Thursday. He's got to beat out Jaden Cromedy. Like, is Cam Jackson going to make this team? Because I look at the unofficial depth chart. They put out another one the other day, And he's still fourth string. And that is exactly how I've seen things play out. Corey Thornton, fourth string, that's not true. But Cam Jackson, fourth string, that is true. Jaden Crumedy, that is true as well. So I'm very curious how many guys they end up keeping on the interior defensive line once the initial cut down happens next week, and who earns that fifth, maybe sixth spot. Well, that's going to potentially be determined on Thursday night as well. The kicker competition, the kick traversy. Of course, this is the last opportunity for Matthew Wright and for Ryan Fitzgerald to prove Tracy Smith correct that there is an NFL kicker on this roster. I mean, Matthew Wright, there was a great article by Alex Zeitlov, the Charlotte Observer, friend of the show, about what he's gone through to get to this point to potentially be a full-time starting kicker in the National Football League, having to work regular jobs, having to do all these other things to chase after and potentially realize his dream. But I'm rooting for him. I'm also rooting for Ryan Fitzgerald, who was outstanding last year at FSU, banged home a 50-plus yarder last week and showed the kind of leg that Eddie Pinheiro didn't necessarily provide to Carolina. And by the way, Eddie Pinheiro is still available. So if things don't work out with Matthew and things don't work out with Ryan, they could always circle back there to Eddie, but I'm guessing that is not necessarily what they want to do. So this is a final opportunity for both those guys to get a chance. And I hope for their sake that Jack Plummer and Bryce Perkins can move the damn ball down the field and give them an opportunity to actually kick a field goal and actually get kickoffs, because they have not gotten any work in the preseason through the first 2 weeks. Let that be the case, hopefully, on Thursday evening. Then the final thing, speaking of Jack Plummer and Bryce Perkins. So Jack Plummer is not going to make the 53-man roster, rightfully so. He's just isn't that good. Had 2 interceptions last week. And I saw someone put it out there on Twitter, like, was Jack Plummer good in college, or was he just hanging out in Charlotte and they decided to put him on the roster? Like, he actually had a nice season at Cal, had a good enough season at Louisville. I do think he was the thing that really held them back from potentially beating that undermanned Florida State team that got snubbed the next day, not selected in the top 4 of the college football playoff. I didn't think it was great. He put up good enough numbers. I wasn't the biggest Jack Plummer fan. And then even from what I saw last year, what I've seen so far this year, yeah, I don't really see it, man. I know who was good in college, Bryce Perkins. And I know who was the UFL MVP, Bryce Perkins. I don't think Jack Plummer, if given the opportunity one day, will be the MVP of the UFL. And I don't think that's shade. Is that something you want? Maybe it is. Maybe that'd be the highlight of his football career. I don't know. But Bryce Perkins is somebody who has ties to the organization. He's old enough to where he was teammates with Mike Bercovici, a special offensive assistant back at Arizona State. And he knows some of these people from his time spent in LA with the Rams, where he actually started and had to play in a game in the NFL. If he goes out there and plays well enough to where it's like, okay, maybe there's something here. Does he earn that practice squad quarterback spot over Jack Plummer? I wouldn't be opposed, because you cannot tell me that Jack Plummer is better than Bryce Perkins. Maybe Bryce Perkins goes out there and looks terrible and makes me look like an idiot. But come on. Even if that's the case, ain't no way that Jack Plummer is better than Bryce Perkins. And if Jack plays so much better than him, probably because he's been in the offense for 2 years. And Bryce Perkins has been in the offense since Monday. So we'll see how it plays out. But those are all the things, among others, that I'm really looking out for on Thursday night when the Panthers host the Steelers for their final preseason game ahead of the 2025 regular season. Wide receiver, that was one of them, one of the back end spots. Do the Panthers keep 6? Do they keep 7? Probably not 8. Well, do they end up parting ways with one of them by sending somebody to Minnesota? Because the Vikings apparently are looking, and Carolina has 1, maybe 2, maybe 3. That could make some sense for Minnesota. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. So take a flyer on the MVP race. Are you believing that Chuba Hubbard could be MVP? If so, why not put the money down on that? Crown your champion in August. Why not do it? We've heard what happens when the Panthers start against Jacksonville. We've heard what happens when the Ohio State University wins a national championship the year prior and Panthers start against Jacksonville. We've also heard about when Jennifer Lopez gets divorced, what happens? The Panthers go to the Super Bowl. So if you want to go ahead and put your money down on that, go ahead. Or you can parlay your division winner dark horse, which I think that also could fit here in Carolina. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. On Wednesday morning, NFL Network reporter Tom Pelissero put this out on social media, saying, with Jordan Addison suspended and multiple injuries, the Vikings are seriously exploring veteran receivers in the trade market. Per sources, All-Pro Justin Jefferson has a hamstring and is on track for week 1. His early season running mate may not be on the roster. So that made me think, could Carolina be a team that sends a veteran wide receiver over to Minnesota? And would Adam Thielen potentially be that guy? Now, the Vikings do have some concerns at wide receiver. Obviously, Jordan Addison, like, he's going to miss first 3 games because he violated the league's substance abuse policy. Don't do that, and you don't get suspended. So 3 weeks at least, they will not have their number 2 to Justin Jefferson. And then the hamstring, while he may be, that being Justin Jefferson, on track for week 1, does not guarantee he will be fully healthy and ready to go week 1. And that on top of Rondale Moore, just, I mean, a heartbreaker. That guy was awesome his freshman year at Purdue, when they had that game where that kid had had cancer. I think Tyler was his name, and they won and put like 50 burger on Ohio State. Like, that was a hell of a night. Then he was banged up ever since then. NFL, same case. Awful injury that he suffered in the preseason. Hate that for him. He's out for the year. Jalen Naylor, he's week to week with a hand injury. So yeah, there's some concerns up there in the Twin Cities as far as, do they have any receivers who are going to be healthy in the first part of the season? Well, the Panthers are a team that don't really have those concerns because, knock on wood, haven't had any significant injuries to a wide receiver at all during the preseason. The only significant injury was Hunter Renfrow dealing with a hamstring, and that was a hamstring injury where they said if this was the regular season and it was game going to be played that mattered, yeah, he would have been fine. But because it was the preseason, yeah, we're not going to put him out there too early. We're going to give him some time. Then Jalen Coker was sick. So other than that, it's been a clean bill of health. Again, knock on wood for the Panthers. When you look at what the Panthers have at wide receiver, they got like 8 guys who you could make a really good case for being on the roster. Like Adam Thielen doesn't really need to be said. Xavier Legette, same thing. Tedero McMillan, same thing. Jalen Coker, same thing. Hunter Renfrow. Maybe there's a little bit more doubt because, okay, he hasn't really been healthy since 21, didn't play last year. He's been a little bit quiet since the hamstring, but like, yeah, he should be on the team. David Moore, Canales loves him. And when he said last week, when talking about Jimmy Horn Jr. and his role in trying to make this team, and he talked about how he loves how one of the assistants on the team are spending every waking moment, it seems like, with Jimmy Horn to get him up to speed. He did the same thing with David Moore. So for a guy who spent all that time with David Moore when Moore was a young player in Seattle, makes me think that David Moore is probably going to be around, folks. But maybe you can make an argument that, oh, what does he really bring? Well, apparently he brings a lot that Dave Canales and the rest of the locker room really responds to. Jimmy Horn Jr., 6th-round pick, has the speed, is a guy that I think could really help him out in the future. Maybe not this season so much, but yeah, great case for him to be on the roster. Then Brycen Tremayne wouldn't have made the case prior to camp opening. And even after a week, wouldn't have made the case. But over the last couple of weeks, it kind of feels like, can you seriously look these guys in the eyes and say that Brycen Tremayne isn't deserving of being on the initial 53-man roster? Like, that's how well he's shown out. The only problem is, like, look at the guys ahead of him on the depth chart. And it's like, yeah, damn, maybe the case is really hard to make. But they have 8 guys you can look at, and you can see them on the roster and be like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, that's a great spot for Carolina to be in. And a spot I'm sure that Minnesota wishes they were in right now. Now, eventually they'll be fine, because you look at Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, like, yeah, I'll take that 1-2 this season over any 1-2 you can put here in Carolina. I think that's a fair thing to say. Maybe you have the processed blue colored glasses on and wouldn't agree, but I don't know, man. But like, the Vikings eventually will be fine. But right now, they're not fine. So Carolina seems like a team that would benefit from moving on from somebody that's a part of that 8 group of receivers who certainly have a case to make the roster. And you could even say, like, there's no reason to present a case because it's like, duh, this guy's going to be on the team. Talk about this on Friday with Mike K ahead of the game against Houston, just making a trade. And we talked about Adam Thielen to make a lot of sense. And at some point in time, maybe Carolina will make that trade by getting rid of their oldest player on the roster, at least at the receiver spot, as Adam's 35. And the rest of these guys are young and they have a future here in Carolina. And this is likely it for Adam, both in Carolina and also playing in the NFL. So when you look at just the guys who could be traded, like the untouchables to me, without a doubt, are Tedero McMillan and Xavier Legette. You just spent the 8th overall pick on McMillan, and you spent a first-round pick and traded up, by the way, to get Legette last year. Yes, you can go out there and argue for Jalen Coker, but like he's the 4th guy on the team right now. He's playing special teams, and typically if they make you do that, you're not one of the top guys. But if Thielen goes, then yeah, he comes up to the top guy. So I wouldn't really want him to be on the market, especially like you look at the salary cap. He's not even a part of their top 51 salaries, meaning that his salary does not even count against salary cap. Like that's how little he's making. It's a lot of money still. That's how little he's making as far as just looking at the Panthers salaries this year. And he's an exclusive rights free agent after the year. So you're going to have to pay him a little bit, but not like a lot after this season. So yeah, he's not untouchable per se, because if you can get something for a guy who was undrafted last year and who you like actually cut and he brought back and played well, like that's a good thing, I suppose. But I don't think I don't want to see it. And I know, of course, the cokeheads and plenty of you don't want to see it either, but I wouldn't say that he's untouchable like a McMillan and like a Legette because of the assets that were spent on both of those guys compared to no assets spent on Coker, even though like the guy clearly has a lot of value on this roster and maybe could make sense for Minnesota, but he's not a veteran. So I don't know if they would be looking for him. Adam Thielen, very clearly, he's available, former Minnesota Vikings. So not like it would be difficult for him. He still has a home up there. All the guys are up in Minnesota at the lake. Some of them wouldn't get in the water. Others would. So pretty easy transition for Adam and his family if they decide to do that. But maybe not because school's starting. I don't know how old his kids are, but he could easily go up there for the fall and they would be right back literally at home. And then Jimmy Horn Jr., 6th-round pick. Like they traded away their 7th-round pick last year. Michael Barrett was not going to make the team. Don't think he's on an active roster anywhere in the NFL last year or will be on one this upcoming season. I don't look at Jimmy Horn in the same light as Barrett, even if I mention Barrett's name. But again, he's a late round pick. So those guys, if you can flip them for something more valuable, which I don't think Jimmy Horn's done anything in his short couple months in Charlotte that would have raised his value from a 6th-round pick. Like if you get like a 4th rounder for Jimmy Horn, then yeah, okay, for sure. But if it's still the same thing, it doesn't really make any sense if you're not going to get a player for them. They're not looking to do like it sounds like a player for player trade. It sounds like they're just looking for a veteran, and that's not what Jimmy Horn Jr. is. And guys I'm guessing are not tradable would be David Moore and Brycen Tremayne. But Adam Thielen very clearly is the name of interest when it comes to a potential trade with Minnesota. He's a veteran. He's been there before. And he's the oldest man in the room and a very young, talented, unproven wide receiver room in Carolina. But would the Vikings be willing to take Adam Thielen back? I talked to somebody and they think that actually could be something they're interested in. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL. Would the Minnesota Vikings take back Adam Thielen? That was actually a question that someone asked me in my DMs a couple of weeks ago at Julian Council, by the way, over on Twitter and on Blue Sky. And I told him, I don't know. I don't know if Minnesota would do that. I don't know if Carolina would do that. They did give Adam that reworked contract where this season he could make up to $8.75 million with initial $4 million available through incentives based off of his performance this upcoming season. And they gave him that $1.5 million roster bonus back in March. I don't know if Carolina gave Adam that much money. And I don't know if Adam stayed in Carolina and wanted to be gone before the season, because clearly he believes in Bryce Young. He wouldn't be here still if he didn't believe in Bryce and believe in Dave Canales and believe in what the organization is at least building towards this season. I think he wants to be a part of this. So I told him, I don't know if that would make sense, especially like for Minnesota. The whole thing about it right now, according to Tom Pelissero, and even some other people out there. I was reading a Minnesota Star Tribune, Ben Gessling, who used to be the ESPN NFL reporter for the covering the Minnesota Vikings. He was asking about Adam Thielen to people, like, would it make sense to bring in Adam for basically 4 weeks to be the number 2 to Justin Jefferson? Then after that, they have to take a back seat to Jordan Addison. And then I don't know where Jalen Naylor fits into that whole situation, but does he want to come in for just a couple of weeks of being one of the top guys and then having to take a back seat? Now, in Carolina, we could see that maybe as the season progresses, and you would certainly hope as the season progresses that Xavier and Tedero become the top 2 guys and that Adam Thielen becomes that 3rd guy. But that's not something that they would be trading for. Like, that's just how it is. That's how it would naturally evolve to throughout the season. And like, also Adam Thielen like said yes to being here. If he goes to Minnesota, maybe they have a conversation with him. But it also has to be in the best interest of the Panthers organization. And they've made it very clear they're going to do what's in the best interest of this organization in the decisions that they make. Would Minnesota take him back? That is the question. I asked somebody who is close to the organization, would have an understanding, and they told me that from the Minnesota side of things, he thinks that they're interested, or they think that they're at least interested in a reunion of Adam Thielen. I can't speak from the Carolina perspective because I have no idea what's going on in the building there in Carolina. The same person kind of made it sound like maybe the Carolina Panthers could be interested, but they could tell me just from the Minnesota side of things that the Vikings are at least interested. And I had asked, okay, so Adam, he was in Minnesota. He could have signed a deal to stay there, and that didn't happen. Well, the person told me that they offered him a deal. It just wasn't that good. We saw what Adam got here in Carolina. We see how they've taken care of him again this offseason. Very clearly, he's made more money the last 3 years here in Charlotte than he was going to make back home in Minnesota had he stayed there with the Vikings and been there in a reduced role. And after 2 years of playing a primary role and potentially at least starting off the season being in a spot to play another primary role in this Panthers offense, does he want to just spend 4 weeks back home in a big time role and then have that reduced as soon as Jordan Addison comes back? And really, it's 3 weeks. Maybe it takes a week for Addison to get back up to speed, and then week 5, that's when he starts playing well. But that is interesting to me. If that's what Adam Thielen would want, and if Minnesota truly wants to make that happen, like if anybody is going to get traded out of this group, it makes the most sense for it to be Adam Thielen. Like Hunter Renfrow, I guess, would be the other one. You got to take the emotion out of it. I just got to just show you how dirty this business is. If a guy who literally wanted to retire got talked out of it by Dabo Sweeney, lives here in the Carolinas, want to stay home, if they trade him away to damn Minnesota to go freeze his ass off. I guess it's gonna be nice for a couple more months, but oh man, that would be kind of gross. But you gotta do it the best thing for the organization. If they can get something for him, they can get something for him. I just don't know, just based off like he didn't play last year, and Minnesota's probably not abreast to the situation medically like Carolina is, if they are willing to really give up assets that make sense for Carolina for Hunter. Like if you say, okay, you can get a 6th round or whatever, make the trade. Okay, I guess maybe make the trade. But to me, Adam Thielen seems like clearly the guy. But my preference, at least watching things play out this season, would be if Carolina's going to make a trade and move on from Adam Thielen, I want to see what McMillan and what Leggett and what Coker and what the rest of this young receiver core does in the first half of the season before entertaining that. And when would I personally want to entertain that? It would be at the trade deadline. Because while, yeah, XL, really exciting what he can do. Like, okay, we need to see more because last year, dealing some injuries and being young and all that, I want to see it. Like, I need to see it first. Like, that's a big thing with me with this team. Like, I know there's a lot of excitement, rightfully so, but I need to see it to really believe. And you could say, see, not believing, seeing whatever. I need to see it to really be fully bought in on what these guys actually are. We talk about what they can be. We talk about the potential, about the talent, but what are they right now? Like right now, Xavier Legette, he's just okay. Tyler McMillan, what is he right now? He's a guy who's never played it down in the NFL. Jalen Coker, a nice player, but the fourth guy. Hunter Renfrow was good, I don't know. David Moore, all right, we know what he provides. Solid. Jimmy Horn hasn't played a snap in the NFL. Brycen Tremayne hasn't played a snap in the NFL. So it's a lot of unknown outside of Adam Thielen, who you could even say yourself is an unknown because he's 35 damn years old. And I always feel gross saying that because I'm 32 and he's not that old, but you understand. So if they're going to make that decision to move on Adam Thielen, I don't think it should be now. And if it's going to be now, Minnesota, pay a premium because you're that desperate to get off to a good start that you want to make sure that you don't fall off to begin the season. You need a number 2, maybe even a number 1 for a week or two. If Justin Jefferson's banged up, you make them pay you a good amount. Like a 4th rounder, you take it. Day 2 pick, obviously you take it. But I think it would be smarter for Carolina to wait for a couple weeks of the season to play out, find out what they truly have in the young guys. And if they do what they should do and what everyone should hope that they do, which is surpass Adam Thielen, then yeah, you move on from Adam. If there's a contender out there that has an injury or could see his value for them down the stretch. And yeah, he could have value here in Carolina because I think everybody obviously wants them to be a contender. So we'll see. We'll see. He would be the one for sure. He fits the bill from being a veteran, having been there. It makes all the sense in the world. But is the price right? And is the timing right for Carolina? Two things that they have to ask themselves. And of course, the Vikings have to ask themselves. And maybe even you can ask yourself here. All right, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all, subscribe, follow the show free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council. September 3rd, mark your calendars. The weekly Wednesday mailbag is back, baby. Every single Wednesday throughout the regular season and quite possibly the playoffs here in Locked On Panthers. In the meantime, at me, DM me over on Twitter and Blue Sky to get any questions in or any thoughts you have about the Carolina Panthers leading up to roster cut down day next Tuesday. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole, and always keep pounding. And I will talk to y'all live from the press box on Thursday night or maybe Friday morning, following the Carolina Panthers preseason finale against the Pittsburgh Steelers.